Have you ever noticed how, in Korea, the line between absolute success and total oblivion is frighteningly thin? In 2025, some of the most famous faces in K-dramas crossed that line and plummeted. Scandals, accusations, mistakes that cost millions, and even tragedies no one could have predicted. Names that, until yesterday, were synonymous with talent and charisma are now on the industry's blacklist and may never return. Brace yourself, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about cancellation. It's about how fame can turn to dust in a matter of hours. And the last case on this list is undoubtedly the most shocking of all. Few names in the Korean entertainment industry carried as much backstage presence as Yong Q. He wasn't one of those actors who sought to live in the shadow of a single successful role. On the contrary, he built a solid career, moving seamlessly between film, television, and theater, with a versatility that made him beloved by directors and respected by colleagues. You might not immediately recall his name, but you definitely recognize his face. He was in productions like Big Bet, Extreme Job, Snowdrop, and dozens of other works where, even without being the lead, he always delivered memorable performances. But in July 2025, a career spanning over 2 decades began to crumble in a matter of hours. Yong Q was caught driving under the influence, the infamous DUI. The news hit like a bomb. In South Korea, this type of offense isn't seen merely as a personal mistake, but as a serious moral failing. And when it comes to public figures, the scrutiny, as always, is relentless. His driver's license was suspended. The shows and dramas he was cast in began announcing his removal, and even theater productions where he had regular roles canceled his participation. What could have been a moment to apologize and try to rebuild his image quickly turned into a spiral of silence and withdrawal. The media exploited the case with harsh headlines, social media was ablaze with criticism, and the pressure seemed to grow by the day. Veteran actors often have more to lose in moments like these, as their reputation is built over years of effort. In Yong Q's case, the fall was far too steep. 2 weeks after the incident, on August 4, 2025, Korea woke up to even more devastating news. Yong Q was found dead inside his car. According to the police, there were no signs of foul play. The most likely conclusion is that he took his own life. The tragedy caught everyone by surprise: colleagues, fans, and even those who barely followed his career. Messages of condolence multiplied, many laden with regret. Maybe we were too hard on him. He deserved a second chance. Yong Q's case laid bare, once again, the dark side of the pressure artists face in Korea. The culture of cancellation, the speed of social media, and the lack of real space for mistakes to be redeemed create a suffocating environment where the margin for recovery is minimal. A single misstep, even a serious one, can turn into a sentence with no return. And what's left afterward? For many, the memory of a talented actor who brought unforgettable roles to life. For others, a painful example of how public judgment, combined with personal pressure, can lead to irreversible consequences. Yong Q wasn't just another name crossed off the 2025 productions. He was a living, and now, sadly, posthumous warning about the limits of the demands we place on public figures. Meanwhile, Seung Hun was coming off a series of ups and downs in his career. With standout roles in productions like The Glory and Queen of Tears, he had earned not only the industry's respect, but also a passionate fandom. His face was on commercials, magazines, and variety shows. He was one of those actors who seemed to be living at the peak of his career. And perhaps that's exactly why the shock was so great when, in early 2025, he found himself at the center of a completely unexpected controversy. It all started with a post on his own Instagram. In a seemingly casual moment, Seung Hun shared a story featuring the cover of an adult video with direct references to Squid Game, including suggestive visuals and a provocative title. The detail? It was explicit enough to be considered inappropriate content and carried a sexual connotation tied to one of the most iconic Korean productions in history. Within minutes, the image went viral. Screenshots circulated across social media, and the reaction was immediate. Outraged fans, journalists commenting on the case, and a flood of criticism about his lack of professionalism and complete disregard for his own image. South Korea is extremely sensitive when it comes to the public conduct of its artists, and something that might be brushed off as a tasteless joke in other countries becomes a career-damaging scandal there. The actor responded shortly after, deleting the post and claiming it was all a mistake, an accidental share that was never meant to go public. He apologized, but as is often the case, apologies rarely put an end to the matter. The negative backlash had already reached its peak. Advertising contracts went under review, and some ongoing projects began evaluating his continued involvement in their casts. More than the image itself, what angered part of the public was the context. Seung Hun was coming off a moment of global exposure, with The Glory solidifying his name as a compelling villain and Queen of Tears expanding his international reach. In other words, he was on the radar of new fans, including those outside Korea, and any misstep would be amplified. Moreover, by associating, even indirectly, an iconic drama like Squid Game with adult content, he touched a sensitive nerve, the defense of the integrity of Korean productions on the global stage. After the apology, the actor adopted a lower profile on social media. He stopped making personal posts, limiting himself to promotional content and strictly professional appearances. It was a clear strategy to try to let the dust settle, something that, in Korea, can work if time passes and the public finds another target for their criticism. But with 2025 already marked by a series of cancellations and controversies in the industry, his name ended up cemented on the list of celebrities who messed up that year. Su Hyun has always been synonymous with perfection in the world of K-dramas. From the resounding success of My Love from the Star to the impact of It's Okay to Not Be Okay, he built an almost untouchable image, a prestigious actor, the face of multi-million-dollar campaigns, the leading man every production desired. His career was a textbook example of how to stay relevant and admired for over a decade in a ruthless industry. But 2025 showed that in Korea, even the highest pedestal isn't immune to collapse. In March, a YouTube video and subsequent articles exploded like a bomb. The accusation that Su Hyun had been in a relationship with actress Kim Se-ron when she was still a minor. Se-ron, it's worth noting, already had a history of controversies, including a drunk driving scandal in 2022. But in this case, the gravity lay in the timeline. According to the accusations, the relationship occurred when she was still a teenager. The allegations gained even more traction because they didn't come solely from tabloids, but also from statements by people close to the actress's family. The response was immediate. Brands began cutting ties. Prada, which had Su Hyun as an ambassador, announced the end of the contract. Other campaigns followed suit. And the hardest blow came from the industry itself. Knockoff, a big-budget Disney Plus drama in which he was the lead, had its filming suspended indefinitely. Fan events were canceled, interviews were called off, and the once-packed schedule became a blank calendar. Meanwhile, the news deepened. Reports surfaced that the actor could face multi-million-dollar lawsuits. Some claims for damages amounted to over $5 million, including compensation for image damage and breach of contracts. There were even speculations about the possible seizure of a luxury apartment valued at around $2.2 million to cover losses. Su Hyun denied some of the accusations, but the shadow over his image had already been cast. And in Korea, public perception often matters more than the judicial outcome. A mere suspicion is enough for a name to be permanently tied to a scandal. The fall was vertiginous. In a matter of days, he went from an untouchable star to the center of one of the year's biggest cancellation cases. And this not only tarnished his reputation, but also sparked a fierce debate online. To what extent is it fair to destroy someone's career before an official conclusion? On the other hand, supporters of the accusation argued that the industry must indeed punish unacceptable behavior, especially when it involves public figures and minors. Now, Su Hyun lives in a dangerous limbo. If he tries to return too soon, he risks reigniting public outrage. If he waits too long, he may permanently lose his place to new faces and talents. In 2025, he stopped being just the perfect leading man of K-dramas and became a living example of how a single scandal can shake, and perhaps destroy, a years-long career. And the question that remains for both fans and critics is, will Su Hyun manage to rise again? Or will 2025 be the year he fell, never to return?